Hi, good morning. It's Imogen here with Body Intelligence, and I am here again picking up my conversations with my friend Shay Seaborne. Um, Shay's a trauma awareness activist, and we're collaborating on some programs and workshops and things for people especially dealing with chronic stress or dealing with trauma. But we wanted to talk to you today about a regulated nervous system and why life is better when you have a regulated nervous system, and what you can do to help yourself have a better regulated nervous system. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. So anyway, hi, welcome Shay. Thanks for
Thank you.
being
Sorry,
here.
my internet went out for a second. That's what that weirdness was.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
Um, so, so today's topic is a regulated nervous system. And I wanted to just share this quote that we have on our webpage from Irene Lyon, who is a nervous
Nervous system
system
expert.
expert. Yes. So she says a regulated nervous system provides you with the energy, resources, and drive to do what you're meant to do. So, Shay, can you explain in simple terms, if possible, what is a nervous system and what we mean by a regulated nervous system?
I'll try. So the nervous system is the brain and all the nerves that run through our body, all the way down to our fingertips, our toes, our skin. So it's the one thing that goes through every single part of our body, and it affects every part of it. And when it's regulated, like Irene Lyon says, we have the energy and the resources and the drive to do what we're meant to do. When we're not regulated, we spend so much of our resources trying to regulate and function that we don't have the capacity to do those things. The more dysregulated we are, the fewer capacities we have for other things other than trying to come back to that state of regulation.
So, can you describe what that looks like? So, maybe start with a dysregulation. So, when we get dysregulated, what does that look or feel like? What happens to us?
Well, it's very individual, and it matters, and the degree. It depends on the degree. When I get dysregulated, I might lose my temper faster, be more judgmental of myself and others, lose things. Like when I'm really dysregulated, I spend so much time looking for my phone that I just had because I don't have the capacity to keep track of it. And all those people you see yelling on TV about whatever, where their mouths are going really big, they are very dysregulated. So when we're dysregulated, we are, sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Maybe I'm dysregulated.
Yeah, and so just to pick up, so we can dysregulate a little bit and come back, and so maybe if something just slightly irritating happens, and it might just startle you or needle you a little bit, but it's not very big and there's nothing major otherwise going on in your life at this time, that you could be on edge or something for, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, you'll probably feel pretty much on an even keel. Is that?
Yeah, and then you go on about your day, and it doesn't really affect you.
Yeah.
That's the recovery from that, whatever the disruption was. And yeah, that's the mark of a regulated nervous system, is one that can come back to. It's not that we're always, smooth and calm. It's that we can go through these different internal states and come back to a regulated, even keeled state, where we can do these things.
Yeah, I think
The regulated state includes a concept called the window of tolerance, which you and I have talked about a lot. So when everybody has their window of tolerance, and this is the space in which they are regulated and able to respond to what's going on in their environment at the time, rather than what already happened or what might happen. And
so
go ahead.
So when you dysregulate, you go a little bit outside your window of tolerance, or you could go a lot outside. So it could be a slight disruption or dysregulation, which of course is easier to come back from than if some major event has happened to really take you off track.
And that's why it's so good.
Up, but it could also be down, right? So we often think of more getting angry and upset and out of control, and that seems like we've talked about. So if you're regulated, that's when you're what's the word? That's when you're more kind of hyper alert and hyper
vigilant. Yes.
Hyper vigilant. Thank you.
Right. Yes.
But you could also kind of go down where you lose energy, you lose the desire to kind of connect with people or the world, and that can kind of lead to depression and the depressive
right. Yeah, that's another example of being outside your window of tolerance.
And that's also dysregulated.
Yes. Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, we tend to think of it like the example I gave, because it's the easiest to recognize. When somebody's screaming, we pretty much know there's something going on with them. But when somebody's quiet, we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to learn what our own personal biomarkers are for dysregulation by paying attention to what happens around disturbances, so that we can recognize earlier that we're coming out of our window of tolerance, and we can use the principles of neurobiology and body intelligence to bring ourselves back into regulation before we flip out. You mentioned the small dysregulation and the large dysregulation, and something that might normally affect us in a small way can affect us very large if we're already dysregulated.
Yeah, if you've already got something, trauma, right? If you've already got, so would one way to describe trauma be that you're living in a dysregulated state? Could that be one kind of clinical way to describe, or describe part of the trauma experience? I'm not sure if I'm.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, that we're
that your window of tolerance where you do experience regulation is very small, and you can learn to grow that area. So you've got a wider.
Exactly.
Bigger.
That's the key problem with chronic stress and trauma. It reduces our window of tolerance, so there's less that we can tolerate that normally we would be able to. So the goal is to increase the window of tolerance, as well as learn how to stay within it and bring ourselves back when we get out of it.
So the causes of dysregulation come from outside of us, our environment, other people,
It to a large degree, yes, and also our inner state. The nature of our inner state, for me, being alive is dysregulating, because I have so much trauma from so early on that I can take a shower and end up sucked into the trauma vortex and have to regulate my way out of it using the tools that we talk about all the time. So some of it is internal, but a lot of it, yes. I mean, my hypervigilance is due to the environment I grew up in and other places where my life was in danger. So that's why I'm hypervigilant. It makes perfect sense.
So the hypervigilance is needed and necessary. It's a very, very important survival and safety tool if you're in an unsafe environment, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to then not see every environment as unsafe.
Yes, when your early environment was chronically unsafe, it's hard to feel safe at all anywhere. That's my big goal, is learning to feel safe in my body. That's what I'd like to do before I die. I don't know that feeling. So, my challenge is exceptional. Most people don't have to deal with as much. Go ahead. I lost it again. I'm a little dysregulated.
I know. And which is, it's not, I was going to say this is perfect for our topic, but it's not perfect that you're dysregulated. That's not what I meant.
No, that's why it all happened.
But appropriate. No. I don't know what appropriate for our discussion that it came up. Let's put it like that. Let me look at my list of questions. So let's do that. So we talked about this kind of flexibility, and that's what life is. No one's in this calm kind of state all the time, easeful state. As much as we might idealize that might be pretty boring too. But life
it would also be very unsafe if the lion's coming after you and you're like, hey,
you need the you need the
be able to react,
fight flight system.
And that's
so
the
I have
key.
another.
I think we have a little bit of a delay.
I think
that's
we do.
The key is being able to respond to what's actually happening with massive trauma like mine. My nervous system is actually reacting to what already happened. It's acting as if that danger is still here. There's nobody in here with a scalpel who's trying to cut me, but my nervous system is afraid that's going to happen because it did. And so even tiny little sounds can disturb me and bring me into further dysregulation.
So I'm looking at the other quote that we have on our webpage about the course we have coming up. And this is from a complex trauma specialist, Deb Dana, she's a social worker as well. So she says, a regulated nervous system brings flexibility, which brings resilience. And a regulated system can dysregulate and come back to regulation. And I think that's the kind of important point you've been making as we've discussed that.
A regulated nervous system has the resources to come back. Before we came on, I was telling you a little bit about what happened on Friday when I was very dysregulated in a calming pain management Zoom group. And I lost my stuff. And it turns out that it wasn't because of really what happened in that group. It was because of what had happened the previous day, coupled with lots and lots of trauma. And this dysregulated me for days and days. It was a bad therapy session. I tried a new therapist who does mainstream therapy. She's in network, so I thought maybe I could, save some money instead of paying for everything out of pocket. And that was a very bad idea. Anyway, so I've used my resources to try to regulate my nervous system and process this whole thing, and that kept me from doing all the things that would really be beneficial for me, as far as social activities. Sorry, I am dysregulated. I'm just going to say that.
And I can tell, and you're not so dysregulated that you are unable to have this conversation. It may not flow as well as you might wish, or you might not be able to pick on some of the ideas as quickly as you might desire. But you have a lot of knowledge and experience, and you're expressing it in a coherent way.
Oh, thank you.
I just want to bring that piece of it. So you're not at the flipping your lid stage, which we've talked about before, where you kind of totally lose it, right? So I'm
pretty good at not flipping my lid because I feel it coming most of the time, and I can calm myself down. But this whole thing was a real surprise to me. And I did. It was because I rarely flip my lid. I mean, I had to learn self-control even as a young child, because it was dangerous for me to be angry or to, protest in any way. So I had to learn how to stop expressing it. And that is part of how I also downregulate. I stop the expression, and then I can take care of what's going on inside of me. And this time, my heart was beating out here, and I couldn't think clearly, and I just felt like everything bad was happening all at once, and I knew it wasn't. And words were coming out of my mouth. I don't even really know what they were. I don't think they were mean, but they were sharp. And it disturbed the whole group, and I couldn't stop myself. And it was such an awful feeling to be so jacked up and unable to break that, even with all the practices. Like, I've been practicing with you for 4.5 years now. And with all the mindfulness and everything, I still lost it. This is something that we all need to do really our whole lives.
And you recognized it pretty quickly, what was going on. So let's come to what we can do. So, and like you've just described, things can happen, so you don't so easily regulate. But there are things that you have done over the years, and you're in a much better state of regulation generally than you were a couple of years ago, for instance.
Yes.
So the window and the baseline is a little different now, I'm thinking. So what are some things that we can do to help us regulate?
One of my favorite things is to get into my body and do that mindfully. So using the practices that you teach, that I've learned with you, is my number one go-to, because I've practiced them so much that they're part of my experience. I don't even have to do the whole practice. I can, just think the constructive thought sometimes, and that's enough to break that disturbance in my cycle and help me come back. We can laugh, dance, sing, play, ride a bike, throw things. There are lots of
move your body, get out in nature, I think.
Yeah. And even just expressing it. Say you're alone and you have to get your project done and you can't go ride your bike right now and you're really frustrated. Just say, I'm feeling so frustrated right now, is actually helpful, because when you express your inner state in words, that causes the brain to squirt soothing chemicals through itself. So,
and when you say especially, you mean literally say it out loud. You're not, because otherwise it's more that you're just kind of ruminating over it.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's putting it out into the physical. And it also can help us to share that with if there's somebody around we can share that with, and they can give us a little bit of empathy and maybe even a hug. Hugs are really good for down regulation. Dogs, cats.
Yes, I know. And we're virtual right now, but there's something about we could do it right now, putting your hand, and anyone watching could do this, putting your own hand on your own heart, that it's not the same as another person, but it gives something of the same feeling. And I think when we are looking at another person who's also doing that, and we're doing it together, that adds something to it too.
Exactly.
Don't you have a little fact about this, putting your hand on your heart?
Yeah, it lights up the same parts of the brain that a hug does.
Yeah, so it does. Yeah. Well, maybe this is a nice way to end our conversation, unless you have something else you'd like to kind of say about this whole topic of regulation. Dysregulation.
Well, I don't think we really covered why life is better when you're regulated, like specifically.
Oh, right, we didn't. You can feel the hug.
Yeah. Well, everything functions better. Like Irene Lyon said, you have the capacity to do the things that you were made to do. Your relationships are better because you have more patience with people, and you're more forgiving toward them, and you feel warmer and more cooperative and friendly.
I would think more open and receptive, because you're
Mhm.
not having to close off and protect yourself. So
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the principles of neurobiology is you can't be open and receptive and closed and protected at the same time. So if you're hypervigilant and you're scared, you can't be doing this. So your relationships will be better. Your life will go better. You'll find your keys more easily, and maybe even not lose them.
So you could even save a little time, and
yes. And you just, everything will go smoother. Your calendar will work better, and your house will be neater, and all those things by focusing on the capacity for regulation.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, because you say focusing your capacity for regulation, but that means doing things to look after yourself. I mean, and things that help us regulate are things that are good for our physical well-being, for our mental well-being. They're good for our overall well-being, our overall health, mind and body, right? So
yes, and unfortunately those are often the things that are marginalized in our busy way of life.
Yeah. So helping people have very simple ways to bring themselves into a more regulated state is the key thing that we are teaching in the 4-week course that we're offering. We're really excited that we're offering it a second time. We had a lot of success with our first group, and it was really kind of exciting to see how people were making connections, how some really simple practices can have quite profound meaning for people.
Yeah, for me, that it was so exciting to see how quickly they understood, because the stuff that the stuff that we're doing in class really is stuff that we do naturally and normally, but we're just not conscious of what's happening. And when we have the concepts and the words, we can quickly apply that into little and big situations that improve our quality of life so much. And that was the best thing, seeing like that one night the student was like using it in class to make her life better.
Right, that's right. Yes, and I think the support of the group, we talked about your environment being part of the key part of your being able to regulate, and it's an online group, but there's the co-regulation that happens between us and the students in the group and each other, as well as the actual material and the practices that we're bringing to the learning. That makes it more powerful and more fun. It's interesting that a course on stress and trauma to help you can be fun too. So I will put information about that in the comments after we finish. If anyone has a question about anything we've talked about, you can put that in the comments too. We'll get back to you. And I just want to quickly mention, I have a half-hour constructive rest session on Zoom going on this afternoon. That's at 2:30 Eastern time. That would be 7:30 in the UK. And that's definitely something that can help you regulate your system. So I give a kind of a guided talk for 15-20 minutes, and you can either lie down, there's a specific way, but you can sit, be comfortable wherever you want. So I'll put that information there too. It's a nice little down regulation experience, I think. So
I recommend it.
yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Shay. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Imogen.